You know, David and I keep going on and on and on and on about all kinds of topics. And they all cusp around, I guess, society and modern life and opinion, because we're not a news network, we're an opinion network. And we try and enlighten our audience as to what we think. And I'm going to change the tempo a little bit on David. You know, the ever evolving dynamic of government and conflict in the 21st century is very different. And it's increasingly, could this cause a civil war? Hey, everybody, my name's Stuart Brisgell. That's David Solomon. This is the Rant Network. At over 800 podcasts for 5 years, we've been going Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern. It's unapologetic. We tackle a diverse range of topics, candid conversation, and always bold opinions. Whether we're breaking down the latest headlines, exploring pop culture, debating politics, or delving into complexities of modern life, this is the platform. So grab a seat, settle in. This is going to be a wild ride. Traditionally, we think of a civil war, the images of the American or Spanish Civil War. I mean, that's what we think, or Russian, right? We don't think of a Canadian Civil War or anything like that. We don't look at World War II as a civil war, right? It is largely changed the field and the methodology. It's political warfare, cyber insurance, media manipulation, economic sabotage are the canons, right? So deep-seated polarization, weakening of democratic institutions, erosion of shared national identity, and emerging of rival sources of authority is the recipe. And does this sound familiar? And are we in the United States witnessing unprecedented levels of political tribalism? Right? Americans feel 60% more that opposing political party threatens their national well-being. David, what do you think?
Well, I don't know where you got that from, but here's the catch, folks, of where I'm at wit's end. I don't know if you've paying attention because the media is still caught up in Trump derangement syndrome, and we talked about that on Friday, that you need to take Trumpanol, but what's being lost, folks, in this conversation is the anarchy that has been really surfaced way more since October 7th, 2023. What happened in Israel, where 1,200 people were murdered, burnt, raped. We've seen this, and we've talked about this, and please go back to past rants. I'm not going to sit here and repeat all that. But on that day, and on October the 8th, people were celebrating. People were celebrating. And words like any means necessary were used. Yes, they disguised their glee behind as let's free Palestine and all that stuff. And I'm not here to talk about political free speech and whatever. But the nonsense behind it, ladies and gentlemen, was ignored for the longest time. And now here we are, April of 2025, 18 months since. And it's time for you to open your eyes. Douglas Murray, famous British journalist, has just released a book called On Democracies and Death Cults. And in his book, he really gets into the fact that the democracy that allowed education to run amok has turned our younger generation, turned Gen Z into haters. It's a death cult, calling for the death and destruction of an entire people. And no, they're not cheering for Palestinian deaths. They're cheering for Jewish death. They're cheering for Jewish annihilation. They're cheering for the elimination of the state of Israel. This is a total contradiction to what the woke movement has been pushing for. What you've created here is an anarchy, a movement that's been controlled at the university level, promoted by university professors, media, politicians, and you've created a death cult. You've created anarchy that has been permitted. Take a look at downtown Toronto, Stuart, where hundreds of people block off a street in downtown Toronto because they're going to do Muslim prayer. Nah. And it wasn't a Jewish woman who was screaming to get the hell out of the way. It's a regular Torontonian who said it's illegal what they're doing. And the woman is harassed verbally in ways that you cannot imagine. Because that's the anarchy that has been permitted to fester. You see this every week in Toronto, by the way, where where people are being harassed. Jewish institutions are being vandalized, bombed, firebombed, shot at. You name it, it doesn't make a difference. Stuart, the synagogue that you and I grew up in here, which was firebombed a second time last fall, can I tell you, they just arrested the individual who did it? And can you guess his age?
How old?
19.
Wow.
Do you know where
I'm surprised.
Do you know where he lives in Montreal?
Where?
The east end of Montreal. Wow. Not even in the western part of the island where we are. He was from he went all the way some 75 kilometers to cause this kind of damage, because that's what they've created. This is anarchy, ladies and gentlemen. And if you just saw last week a story that kind of went under thanks to Trump derangement syndrome, went under the rug, that Union Station was taken over for the similar protest. You see this happening in the UK, France, different parts of the world. And again, where there's a left-leaning government, it's applauded. It's celebrated. It's actually, they're encouraged. And what's ended up happening, Stuart, right now, is that you have people who are finally reached the boiling point and said, enough. But what are you going to do about it?
David.
No, hold on. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
No,
you brought up a whole bunch of points, which really hit all the cylinders that I started us off. You said, where did I get it? And I'm basically understanding Civil War. I'm not a history graduate as yourself, but I do know quite a bit about history. And so the question that I'm going to throw at you, that I want you to try and bring into this conversation, and I'm going to give you 4 pillars. The only way to reverse course at this point is you have to restore civic education, reinforce the institutions, bridge the economic equalities, and hold all media platforms accountable. And finally, the overall, when I mean restore civic education, I'm including the civic leaders, the Hakeem Jeffries, the Nancy Pelosi's, all of them, including on the right side as well, not to go over the apple cart. But David, this is the modern frontier. This is a modern war. This is warfare.
But Stuart, I'm going to tell you, but to your point, I hear what you want is the solution. But folks, you need to recognize where the problem is, because you can't implement a solution until you realize what the problem is. When you have leaders like Emmanuel Macron, who are who's the French president, who stands up and says, we're just going to unilaterally declare a Palestinian state. While you think you're doing something okay on this side, he's trying to save his political bacon, because France has been inundated with protesters, Muslims and Arabs, and you name it, who are screaming and yelling for the death of Israel. And his solution is, okay, well, we need a Palestinian state because this will all go away. No, it won't. That's just step one. It's political suicide for Macron, who has been absolutely a political putz lately. Okay. But what you don't hear, for example, if you really do care for a 2-state solution, then step one, release the hostages. But that's not going to be important. But here's what your second point. You talked about the leadership. Now let me talk about the media. The media has been pushing the narrative, Stuart, like everything else, that Israel's at fault. Everything that's wrong is Israel is at fault. It doesn't matter that in the most recent, accusation that Israel killed medics, that in the back of that truck were terrorists. It doesn't matter the facts.
Nope.
It doesn't matter what's going on. Okay? Instead, you have publications like the New York Magazine who's saying Jews should not trust Trump to protect them. Why? The Biden administration did any freaking better? No. Trudeau administration in Canada did any better? No. Keir Starmer in the UK? No. Emmanuel Macron, France? No. But this media publication has decided who should be the protector. The same people who've been blaming Jews and promoting anti-Semitism That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is where where you say hold the media accountable. Who's
Yeah,
going to do it?
60 to 70% of all hate crimes in the United States are targeting Jews.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Not Muslims, not blacks, not
No,
Chinese.
but what is so how is it twisted? And this
Mm.
is where your thing. Oh, but we can't ignore Islamophobia. Even the word phobia is inside that. You never heard of Christian phobia, Buddhist phobia. All you hear is Islamophobia. Whoever coined this term, and go back to Douglas Murray, even he said, you don't find a single religion, you don't find a single race where the word phobia is in there, except for the Muslims. And who is afraid? You know what? Extreme Muslim you should be phobic. You should be afraid of them because they're changing your society under your nose.
Mm.
When you go to beat it, you see these movements in political, institutions, municipalities, and state legislatures trying to pass BDS movements, trying to, ban Jews. Tell me, Stuart, when you see that the Trump administration is threatening now Cornell, amongst other universities to withhold funding because they now are telling you have to protect students. I mean, there's a civil war about to explode, and it may not be with guns and bullets, but holy crap, your society, our Western society, is in deep trouble.
Oh, well, David, look, it would have continued with the hyena. And I hope you and Canada find peace and change there. The reality is the politicians have polarized two sides. You find in the United States, the political spirit has flipped Democrat on Republican, Republican on Democrat. And you find that the party of the people is not the party of the elite. And the party of Hollywood isn't the party of the people. And, I always am a firm believer you're a wonderful actor. You're a brilliant performer, but you're a dumbass. You can't be an artist and a military general at the same time. It's just two polar opposites of the brain. You can't have a civilization without laws and rules. You can't have order without law enforcement. You cannot have a country unless it has borders. You couldn't have gotten to free speech without blood. And again, the altruists don't really follow logic. And you know what? It goes along with woke. It goes along with gender insanity. It goes along with the current Democratic Party not having a single platform that makes any sense for 90% of Americans. Why did Donald Trump win? Because he spoke to the people about and about everyday problems. Is this the worst time in economic history? Hell no. Did he force you to stay home for years on end? No. The reality is the civil war that is already undergoing by media has started years and years and years ago. It's only come to a head. This is people that are trying to destroy the United States experiment. And David, the Canadian experiment, right, which actually started with the Hudson Bay Company, is no longer what the experiment was designed to do.
Oh, hell no. It's not even close.
No. And I hate to tell you, look, I grew up in Canada. I'm not a Canadian voter. I'm an American voter. But I'll tell you, Canada is currently would be poorer than the poorest state in the United States. But however, the government keeps telling you, and again, the control of media over what's going on continues to be the principal part of the problem. And there was a James Bond, and I've mentioned this a few times, where a glorified billionaire owns a news agency and starts a civil war. Do you remember that one, David?
Vaguely, but
all right. You are living it today. That's all I'm saying, David.
All I'm saying is, listen, Stuart, I'm going to tell you something. And I was trying to figure out where you were heading with this. But let's just talk about you said what needs to happen. I'll give you a little tidbit about what just happened in Montreal here not that long, just last week. McGill University, after 18 months of hell, has decided to cut its ties with the student union because of this so-called strike that they did here. It took them how long after those encampments, after damage to property, after all these things, look what it had to get to. And now there are court lawsuits and this and that. Stuart, you have a law firm in the UK that is suing the UK government to take Hamas off a terrorist list. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what is screwed up in this world right now. But right and wrong, it's frightening. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we want to wish you a happy Monday.
And it brings this rant to a close. We truly appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Your support engagement means everything, and we continue fostering open, honest, thought-provoking conversation. We don't wish hate. We're not haters. We're just trying to expose the facts. Sorry. Don't forget, we're every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern. Stay connected with us with a thought-provoking multimedia channel called theratnetwork.com. Any question is always welcome. Any topic, we'd love to hear and discuss it. Your feedback helps shape this community and keeps the conversation alive. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, David, say goodbye.